It's great to be here today. I got up this morning and as I normally do, I went over to my laptop and opened it up to check my email, see what was going on. And I only had 5 emails. I never have 5 emails in the morning, especially during MarkLogic World. So I was a little concerned that we had entered some sort of post-apocalyptic nightmare where all the systems had gone down, but it turned out my laptop had just disconnected from the Wi-Fi. So that was a relief. So I reconnected and I checked my email and I had the normal flood of email plus a ton of emails and links to things relevant to what's been going on at the conference. It was so exciting to see how much interaction there was. I got to tell you, the Pharma Research Hub, tons and tons going on with the Pharma Research Hub. You heard about it from Gary yesterday morning. Hopefully you've been out to the booth out there to see it. If you haven't, please go. It's really good. And I think one of the things that's really exciting about it, and I think everybody picked up on, is it wasn't just pharma companies who are out there looking at the Pharma Research Hub. I think a lot of you looked at that, saw what could be done with the Data Hub service, and the capabilities within MarkLogic, and were able to understand how that would impact your industries as well. So really, really exciting. We announced that yesterday along with a number of other things like Data Hub 5.0. You saw Demo and Paxton, or Justin and Paxton demo the Data Hub version 5 yesterday during the keynote. It's really awesome. A huge step forward, really amazing technology. So I hope if you haven't already, you'll take a deeper look at Data Hub 5. The embedded machine learning is really awesome. Christopher and I are going to do his closing fireside chat this afternoon. I encourage you to be there because that's one of the things that we'll be talking about. And Christopher has a really unique set of insights on what we've done and how it fits into the larger environment. But I'm really excited about it, both for the kinds of things that we, MarkLogic, are going to use that for, as well as what all of you are going to do with this machine learning capability. And of course, all of this is being delivered on top of or with the Data Hub service. So Data Hub service is, I hope you've all had a chance to look into Data Hub service. It's really amazing. Both amazing in terms of what it delivers, the price model, the predictability, really, really amazing offering. We were really excited to bring it to market, and hopefully you've been able to, again, take a look out during some of the breaks at the booth and talk to folks like Kaio Milani, who runs our Data Hub services activity. Again, if you haven't done that, please take a chance to do that. It's well worth your time. And here's just an example of yesterday out in the booth area, tons of interaction. John James with a glass of wine, that's his normal stance. So really great, and what's awesome about it is the collaboration that we get. You've heard us say this before, but one of the best things about MarkLogic World for us is that it's sort of a microcosm of the rest of the year where we get to interact with all of you, find out what's important, what's resonating, and take that back into the product team. I run the product team at MarkLogic. Take that back in and help us direct where we're going in the future. So we really value that. We've got another day of that interaction, so we want to take advantage of it. I hope you'll take advantage of it. So now, as Ken mentioned, what we're going to do in this session is have 4 individuals come out representing their organizations and talk a little bit about their experience of MarkLogic and what they're doing with it. And this year we've mixed things up a little bit. We actually have 2 of our awesome partners who are going to come out and speak, and 2 customers. And within the customers, we've got 1 from commercial sector and 1 from public sector. So we're trying to give you a really good cross-section of industries and of customer and partner interactions with MarkLogic. And these folks are all here at the conference after this session. I expect that this session will kind of whet your appetite to hear more, so please be sure to find them after this and talk more about it. So with that, I'm going to jump in and invite out our first speaker, Karen Wei from NTT DATA. Karen. Hi, Karen. So Karen, thank you very much for joining us. I know you had a really busy day yesterday already.
Yes, I did.
You were on the Women in Innovation panel. I saw you out in those throngs of people talking about what you're doing at NTT DATA. But maybe we could start by talking a little bit about NTT DATA itself, the company and your role in it. It's a huge organization, a top 10 global provider. So maybe you could start there and tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure thing, Joe. Thank you for having me today. NTT DATA is actually part of a larger group, NTT Group, which stands for Nippon Telephone and Telegraph, and they're based in Japan. My company, NTT Data Services, is a subsidiary of NTT DATA. We are a global systems integrator that has multitudes of employees across the world, and I particularly work in the healthcare and life sciences area around health plans. I'm the global practice lead for data and intelligence, otherwise known as analytics and BI. And I'm truly a data geek at heart, which is what really interests me about working with MarkLogic, because it gives me a chance to really move the ball, move the needle forward for our clients.
So you said you have a multitude of employees. You're talking like over 100,000. It's a huge organization.
Correct. NTT Data Group has 120,000 employees worldwide. NTT Data Services is about 50,000 of those. And the healthcare life sciences section is about 10,000 plus.
Wow, wow. And you called yourself a data geek. It's interesting that I've heard several people over the last couple of days almost apologetically refer to themselves as data geeks, but I think in this crowd, it's like it makes you a rock star.
Absolutely, and sometimes it does with my clients as well, because they're like, oh, you can solve my problem.
Yeah. So MarkLogic and NTT DATA have done a lot of work together over the years, but last year we had kind of a milestone and a big change, and we've gone together and done some really interesting work in the healthcare space. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Last year, or for several years, we've been hearing from our clients, again in the health plan and the provider space, that they're struggling with the amount of data. Fortune magazine did a survey last summer, and they came back with the numbers of 30% of the data generated on a daily basis, about 750 quadrillion bytes of data, is healthcare related. 1/3 of the data daily. It's no wonder that healthcare is having struggles trying to figure out what to do with the data, how to get meaning out of the data, how to make it applicable to individual members like you and I,
right,
and how it impacts our healthcare. Some of the other challenges they've talked about is needing to know about the social impacts. What are the things like transportation, food risk, the relationship between the patient and the provider that may be impacting healthcare? Not to mention the different types of data. X-rays, CT scans, lab values. It's not just about the medical claim anymore that goes into an insurance company. It's how do we manage that? And as a result, we were able to come together at the Health Information Management Systems Society 2018 conference and kind of brainstorm about how could we, NTT DATA and MarkLogic, work more closely together because of our existing relationship. It was during that meeting that I met with Bill Fox and Jim Sears and some of my colleagues. We started talking about this challenge of the amount of data, the different types of data, and how we were trying to close that gap and figure out what's the best way to handle that. And Jim and Bill said, we can do that. And as a result, the Business Insights Engine was born.
That's awesome. So you said a third of the data that's created is healthcare-related data.
Yep.
That's incredible. So, when you think about big data and they say volume, you've got volume. You talked about lots of different formats. You've got the variety, and you've certainly got the velocity of data coming through. So it's kind of like the poster child for big data, it sounds like.
It is, absolutely. And you've also got the variety and the veracity tied in there as well. So healthcare is definitely that poster child.
Yeah.
And healthcare has been changing a lot in the last decade. When they started down the path with meaningful use and EMR, EHRs, then they had the Affordable Care Act, now we have the 21st Century Cures Act. Everything is changing so rapidly, healthcare is struggling to keep up, and they were kind of behind the eight ball technology-wise to begin with.
So they were behind the eight ball, you all had that meeting and you said, hey, this is something we can do, and you went off and built the Business Insights Engine.
We did.
Tell us what that is.
Absolutely. So the Business Insights Engine utilizes the MarkLogic Operational Data Hub at its core as the database foundation. We take in data from multitudes of sources, like I've talked about, but we've also worked with another partner, CenterForce Health, that creates propensity models for those social determinants of health risk factors that I spoke of. We bring all the data in, we use Apache NiFi and or MuleSoft, depending on the data source, to bring it in, curate and harmonize it, send it through and store it in the Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources Model, or FHIR. That's sort of the standard that's being pitched in the industry to say, how can we promote communication of data back and forth between hospital systems, between providers, and between health plans. Not only that, but also with pharma, starting to bring in the genomics data as well. We then layered our professional services on top of that for implementation, our analytics centers of excellence, machine learning capabilities, and created those views of the patient/member, employer groups, providers, because there's a lot of regulatory requirements around providers now, keeping their data up to speed in terms of where they practice, what their national provider ID is, et cetera. We can build out any type of view, whether it be pharmaceuticals, drug prescriptions, all of that. We're also working to create those next best actions.
Right.
What's the next thing that's best for that member or that patient to help them get a better outcome for their health care? Through that, we're able to push that downstream as messages to a portal app or a mobile phone app. Whether it's a provider or a member, we can also engage care managers to be able to say, reach out to this member. Looks like they're going to be in trouble. We need to nip that in the bud and prevent an ER visit. Get them their prescription drop shipped to them instead of having them try to figure out how to get the 5 miles with no car and no public transportation.
So this engine then is providing value for the members, better outcomes, it's providing better value for the providers, it's providing insights for the insurers. It's really a very holistic set of technologies and capabilities.
That's correct. We've tried to build it in a way, however, that's componentized so that we can meet our clients, whether it be a provider or a health plan or a hospital system or a pharmaceutical company, where they're at in the analytics maturity cycle, whether they're just getting past doing the retrospective reporting and traditional BI, or whether they're really trying to move towards predictive and prescriptive analytics.
Right.
It gives us that opportunity to be flexible. Maybe they don't need or want the social determinants data. Maybe they already have reports and machine learning tools and advanced analytics. Because of the API-ready nature of both MarkLogic and the resulting Business Insights Engine, we get as close to plug and play as you're ever going to get to be able to do those minor tweaks to say, here's the data, feed it into your existing systems, into your existing reports, and it really reduces the speed to value. The demo environment that we built, and we are already implementing this with a client that we're working jointly on, the demo environment we built in less than 5 months. And that includes manufacturing data to be able to show to you. We used some CMS data and had to add names, addresses, because everything they gave us was de-identified.
Right.
But 5 months.
That's incredible. So you did that, you built that in 5 months. You did it sort of in the context of knowing that you had an initial customer that was going to be using this, but you've built, the Business Insights engine is a generic platform that you can take to lots of organizations now.
Absolutely. That's one of our goals. Is we started in healthcare because that's my vertical, so it kind of made sense. But looking at the overall architecture, we can really expand this across our business in NTT, across all the verticals we work in, transportation, manufacturing, business and banking and finance, all across it. So we're looking to expand it in the future.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about, you just said where you're going to be expanding in the future. What's in the future for NTT DATA and MarkLogic?
My goal is to really continue to build our relationship, to work collaboratively to enhance the Business Insights engine and maybe provide some input into future changes for the operational data hub.
Excellent.
Timing-wise, we're going to be, in the next release, we're going to be putting into the data hub services. Timing-wise, we weren't quite there for our first release, but those are the kinds of things we're going to continue forward with.
That's awesome, Karen. Thank you so much for your partnership, and thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you, Joe.
So that was great. Really awesome to have Karen here with us. 5 months to build this engine that has amazing capabilities, and there's a lot more to it, and I hope you'll go out and see it out there. And our next speaker is a really good user of MarkLogic. In fact, every year we give out the Christopher Lindblad Award for Innovation, and last year this next speaker was one of the co-recipients of that reward for the amazing work that he and his organization have done using MarkLogic. So please welcome to the stage Len Hardy, Senior VP of Northern Trust.
Thank you. You know, I got to say, between you and Ken Cooper, you're making me feel underdressed. I thought you West Coast guys were supposed to wear like hoodies and flip-flops and stuff.
No, they told us that we're in Washington, so we have to dress up. No, you're great. I'm envious. So welcome back. I mentioned that you won the Christopher Lindblad Award last year, but you also were here last year in this very session.
Absolutely.
And backed by popular demand. We talked a lot last year about what you and what your team at Northern Trust have been doing with MarkLogic, and that was really interesting. And we're going to get into that again, but before we do, if you could tell us a little bit about Northern Trust. You're a huge organization. You have, well, you tell us about Northern Trust, and you'll do a better job than I would.
Yeah, absolutely. So Northern Trust is a financial institution. We are headquartered in Chicago. We're 130 years old. We have nearly $11 trillion in assets under custody. We have 3 main businesses: asset management, asset servicing, and wealth management. Our clients are large corporations, sovereign wealth funds, other financial institutions, and then on the wealth side, obviously wealthy individuals, home offices, those kind of things.
Wow. $11 trillion.
11 trillion, yeah.
That's a big number.
And my role has changed over the past year. Last year when I was on stage at MarkLogic World, I was the leader for our enterprise architecture group. Now I'm filling a new role. We formed a new group, and my job is to figure out strategy and operations around private and public cloud, DevOps, developer automation, CI/CD, and then also some business unit specific infrastructure architecture.
Wow, that's really exciting.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different thing for me, but it's very exciting.
But it sounds like they basically took all the cool stuff and gave it to you to work on. That's great. So last year you talked a lot about value creation using MarkLogic and the kinds of things that you were doing there. Maybe you could just give us an update on what you've been doing since last year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the use of MarkLogic across all 3 business units is really been increasing. One of the things that we started last year that we're branding Northern Trust Matrix is the next evolution of our operating platform, mostly for our corporate and institutional business. So Matrix is based on all cloud-native 12-factor development on our internal private cloud. It uses MarkLogic as the data hub for that and is event-driven, so real-time event-driven data, which gives us the capabilities to do more and more with dashboarding, data fabrics, and things like that.
Right. And Len, one of the things that amazed me when we spoke last year is, you know, we tend to think of large institutions like yours as, you know, being sort of conservative and careful, and that's very true. I mean, you are very careful about dealing with your assets and security and privacy and all of those things, but you have an amazing pace of operation. You mentioned that CI/CD is part of your role,
right.
But the pace that you update and innovate and roll out new technologies just I found astonishing. So maybe you could share that with us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I think the trend line is up, right? So the numbers we quoted last year were in February of 2018, and we pushed about 100 times to production. As you can see here, in February of this year, 2019, we're at 210. Right?
Wow.
So this is all including just our platform as a service, our internal platform as a service environment. This doesn't include anything legacy, any containers, any public cloud, anything like that. So these metrics show that we've about doubled our capacity in terms of the amount of times we're pushing to production, and almost doubled the times we're pushing into our UAT environment. You can see the inevitable dips there in December when everybody goes on vacation, and then in January when they come back to work, you know, they start pushing code again.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let me sort of deviate a little bit from what, sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. But in doing this, agility is obviously really important to you and your organization.
Right.
I think one of the things that's been great about working with Northern Trust is the interaction that you have with MarkLogic.
Right.
The input that you've been giving us, the ability for us then to kind of take your input, put it back into product, deliver that back into your organization. I think you've really been a prototype for the kind of relationship that we love having with customers, and hopefully we've contributed to the agility in your organization as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because you know, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier to be agile on the app development side. It's less easy to be agile on the data side.
Right.
And that's what MarkLogic brings to that equation.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
And just a minute ago, you mentioned cloud, both public cloud and your own private cloud.
Right.
I know cloud is top of mind for you. It's part of your role. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're thinking there and what your plans are?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of our very, very high level cloud strategy that you see here. And we've been concentrating, like I said, over the past 18 months on internal private cloud capabilities. So we brought in a platform as a service. We have a container as a service infrastructure, relentless automation, both from the developer perspective and from the operator perspective. We have 600 developers today, supported by 4 operator engineers, right? So 3/4 of their time is spent automating the platform and getting more productivity and making the experience as frictionless as possible. The other 25% of the time is spent operating the platform, updating things, you know, bug fixes, stuff like that. So we've concentrated on our internal cloud, and as you can see by the numbers on the previous screen, you know, we've got some pretty good success out of that. Automating everything and positioning our application developers to know how to do cloud native development. It's a different ballgame.
Right.
We're talking about 12-factor, stateless, true cloud native development. So we've got 600 people from Northern Trust doing that work today in our private cloud, which is positioning us for the inevitable jump into the public cloud. So we do have some experience in public cloud where it makes sense. So things that don't make sense to build internally, things like analytical type of algorithms that you might go to one of the big public cloud providers for, or burst capacity that I don't want to provision for peak in my infrastructure. So we do have some things there, but we're going to be expanding that sort of public cloud journey as we go forward. And I think most importantly, probably the most important thing on this cloud strategy slide is the ability to reevaluate, every 2-3 months, because the pace of change is just so incredible today. If you wait a year, that's 10 years in cloud years.
Right, right. So relentless automation, that's going to be my phrase for today. I love that. And it's so important. We talked a lot about automation in our own services, and then providing more of that within MarkLogic to customers, whether it's automating, mastering, or anything else. But I totally agree with you that sort of strive for relentless automation is going to be key in things like this.
Yeah, and you mentioned, a financial institution, a conservative company, obviously a highly regulated industry. So we have had our work cut out for us in terms of doing that. There were controls that had been in place, probably not for 130 years, but maybe for 30 years, right? That people just always lived with, and we had to go in and question, well, why do I have to do these 4 manual steps? Can I put one automated API call into our ServiceNow infrastructure, for example, to get the approval to make sure I can do the push, right? So you just have to convince people that the way that you're going to do the automation is actually more secure and better audited than the 4 people that looked at something on a screen and signed off on it manually.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So Len, I mentioned that you were one of the co-recipients of the Lindblad Award last year. The other recipient was Maureen Penzenik.
Correct.
And she's here at the conference again. And she and Mike Rogalski, one of your other colleagues, are going to be hosting a session later today on the transition to NoSQL. Last year, as we just discussed, you talked about the pace of innovation and transferring to new technologies. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how MarkLogic and NoSQL in general are sort of changing the way that IT relates to the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't want to steal their thunder, right? So they're going to go into some great details on this, but I would say that for 2019, I think one of our main buzzwords at Northern Trust is analytics, right? And all of these analytics use cases are coming directly from the business, right? So there are use cases for predictive analytics, and there are use cases for regular business intelligence and things like that. And MarkLogic, in many ways, is at the core of this. So this is it was really exciting when I heard your support for Power BI, right? Because we're a Power BI shop. The ability to do those interactions directly with MarkLogic is going to be very, very beneficial for us.
Good.
Right. So everything that's coming from the individual business units, and each of our 3 business units has projects in place and use cases that we're working on with them to deliver some sort of business intelligence or analytics, either to our internal partners or even external through our portals to the clients. So Mike and Maureen, just another plug, they will be giving details on a lot of this work that we're doing with MarkLogic in particular. Excellent.
Well, thank you, Len, for joining us. Really appreciate your time here and your partnership as one of our customers.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. So a few minutes ago, Ken pointed out people who had traveled long distances to get here, and our next speaker is one of those. And just before he comes out, I have to tell you that we had a run-through for this session yesterday afternoon, and Dina Kholkar, who's our next speaker, came to the run-through. He had basically just gotten off of the plane from India, and he looked like $1 million. And I got to tell you, when I fly to India and I get off on the other end, I look like a raisin. So he's obviously a much better traveler than I am. Please welcome Dina Kholkar, Vice President and Global Head of Analytics and Insights for TCS, Tata Consultancy. Still look like $1 million. So Dina, thank you for being here, and congratulations on 50 years of TCS. And I was amazed to learn that for 30 of those years you've been there. TCS, one of the most valuable companies in India, amazing track record of success. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about TCS in general and your role with TCS.
Sure. Joe, thanks a lot for having me here, and it's always a pleasure to interact with all of you guys at MarkLogic. Just to give a view of TCS, you rightly said we just completed 50 years. The data points are over there, but I think the key thing what we have done very well is our entire focus on business for purpose. I think that's a very critical part of our DNA. TCS is part of the Tata Group, which is a 100 billion conglomerate from steel to motors to various businesses. And the IT part of the business is managed by Tata Consultancy Services. And if you look at the last year, we clocked 20 billion. We had a very significant milestone of reaching 100 billion in market cap, which makes us the most valued company in India.
Incredible.
A large number of our employees are women. We are the largest women employer in India, if you really look at.
Wow.
So very large focus on developing women leaders in the country. And the other thing you should probably appreciate, and those of you in the US, the amount of effort that we've been putting in the US, especially on upskilling. And there are two very interesting initiatives. One is called Go IT, where we actually help youngsters which are in school get appreciation of STEM get them through the program called Go IT. We recently partnered with Discovery and the program called Ignite My Future. It is primarily focused on building computer science skills.
Yes.
So some of these things are unknown facts about TCS as an organization, but I think it's a very critical element of our DNA, and that's what makes us tick quite a lot. We are also the sponsors for the TCS New York Marathon. I'm sure there are many runners out here, and that's something which is very important. Wellness, fitness, healthcare is a very critical part of our overall, the corporate social responsibility area. And as part of my responsibilities, I've also been looking at data for good and how data can potentially be used for social transformation. And my team actually put together as a commemorative publication, a book which was consisting of stories across the globe on how data is being used very effectively for social transformation. It's available online on the TCS site, so look forward to people taking a look at it. Coming back to my role, you said 30? I thought it was 13. Joking. So it's my 30th year in TCS. Been in the data space right from the day I started working in TCS. Around the late 90s, I moved back to doing research and innovation in TCS, focused on very large databases, set up the BI practice within TCS. I've done multiple roles in TCS. The last role that I did was managing the BPO business for TCS, which is largely to run operations for our customers. And that gave me a very good perspective on what really happens on running businesses. And my focus on looking at how data gets used in a much more effective manner in running businesses came through that. And I said, let me now use that knowledge and move back into the technology space and set up the analytics and insights unit. Been connecting with quite a lot of people across the globe, understanding the type of challenges that they face on using data for business solutions. And I also very actively involved in community initiatives. So I'm the chairperson for the IEEE Pune section. Oh. And through that, I do a lot of interesting things, especially on the computer society. We do data hackathons and stuff like that, primarily focused on the open data, which is coming out of the smart city initiatives.
Wow. Wow. So you must have started then, if you've been there for 30 years, you must have started when you were about 15 years old.
Just out of school.
Yes.
Just out of school.
And back then it must have been more like Business 1.0, but now I hear Business 4.0.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you mean by Business 4.0.
Yeah, when we looked at the way the industry has shaped up, the industry 1.0, when talked about steam engines, and then you looked at electricity, which is the industry 2.0. Industry 3.0 is more to look at the advances of computing in the businesses. And the digital era, which is the industry 4.0. So many of us in the leadership team, have been spending a lot of time educating industries, a lot of people. What does industry 4.0 mean? What does digital technologies mean in the context of the industry? And we said we need to put our own narrative into the market. And that's where the thought leadership framework of Business 4.0 came up. Our CEO, Rajesh Gopinathan, put that up. And then it has resonated very well with our customers. Various customers, various partners that we interacted with. And it states it very simply. So it has 4 technology pillars. Intelligent, which is all about analytics and data. Cloud. Then we have the entire things around automation.
Yes.
And agility. So these are the technical pillars which we talk about. And if you look at the business behaviors, it's all about leveraging the ecosystem, which is working along with partners, working along with the ecosystem which you are in, embracing risk, because this is the world where data is most critical. There's cyber threats, how do you actually embrace risk in this context? How do you actually drive exponential growth and at the same time look at mass personalization of all the services that you provide? So the narrative has been very highly appreciated, and we've seen very good uptake on the solutioning that we are driving through the entire Business 4.0 framework.
Wow. And I know that TCS has been positioned in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for data analytics and services worldwide as a leader. And that your DATOM architecture and system is a big part of that. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about how MarkLogic is part of that? And I understand that MarkLogic has allowed organizations to move from the siloed level to the synergized level.
Yeah. So this chart, which you can see, is pretty much our point of view on how organizations will pretty much invert the pyramid of their spend and effort that they have in the data space. If you look at the pyramid on the left, that's where most organizations are. They are spending significant amount of money and effort on managing just the foundation, and very little effort being spent on the consumption. And we believe that this pyramid will pretty much invert itself on its head. And it may not necessarily look exactly the same, but it's going to invert and it's going to increase in size multifold. So that's the point of view that we have. And to help that, we've been working with various customers, and my role has been more of an evangelist. So I call myself the chief evangelist of the data analytics space in TCS. And I interact with customers at different levels. So I spend a lot of time with the senior executives in customer organization, educating them, giving them a perspective of what is really changing, why is data so critical, what are the type of things that you need to do when you want to be a data-centric organization. And when we look at DATOM, it became a very good framework, thought leadership framework, to do an assessment of where you are, create a complete roadmap of where we want to go, and different types of enablers for that. And in that context, when we come across certain opportunities for improvement, partners like yourself play a very crucial role. So you did mention about the levels of maturity.
Right.
And whenever I go, I do some of these sessions, I lead myself, and I interact mostly with business stakeholders along with the technology stakeholders. And when you present the findings of the DATOM report, you clearly see them resonate, saying that they're all siloed because they're just not talking to each other. They don't even know how to get that data together.
Right.
And the positioning of MarkLogic in the context of giving them an opportunity to say that here is technology which can help you address this becomes very important. And the selling there is to the business stakeholders, because it helps the technology stakeholders to then make their life much more easier, because getting a business case approved because they see the type of immaturity that they have in their organization is very critical. So we do believe that organizations do need a very formal way in which they should measure their maturity, and then positioning solutions like what you have will play a very crucial role. And I'm quite happy with the steps that you guys have taken on industry solutions, and especially on the stuff that you're doing with pharma and the discussions that we've had earlier. So we've also been focused on the repeatable solutions.
Right.
And, we do believe that the solutions that you bring in and the data hub offerings that are there will play a very crucial role in enabling us in driving our strategy as well, because we are very focused on industries. So the advantage I have is I have worked across multiple industries. Given my earlier roles, financial services being one of the largest one. But everywhere I go, the demand is for end-to-end business solutions.
Right.
Nobody's asking for a point solution from a technology perspective. Everybody is asking for a much more holistic business solution. And in that context, I believe that the approach that MarkLogic has taken on focusing on specific industries and coming up with those type of accelerators or repeatable solutions gels very well into the strategy that I'm laying down for the TCS Analytics and Insights business.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, we think repeatability is very important.
Yeah.
So just last question for you. What's next in the partnership for TCS and MarkLogic?
So I think the focus on the industry verticals and going into the depth of those solutions is very critical. The areas that we are focusing on, financial services, the public services, healthcare and pharma. So there are industry-wise, we are looking at building up these solutions. We have a good partnership built up with a presence right there next to your office. We also will be working with each of the industry verticals to come up with very specialized solutions for those industries that we'll work in. And we've identified two broad themes, if you may look at. One is generating insights from documents. And that's one theme that we are working on. And you find a huge amount of money being spent by people in running operations shops, which do a lot of these things manually.
Right.
So we do believe that's one theme where we can actually make a good amount of solutioning. The second area is around surveillance. There is significant amount of money being spent by organizations in looking at what is happening in the business from a second pair of eyes. And we do believe that across industries, that will have a significant amount of opportunity. And there are some very critical regulations which are coming into play, which will play a very crucial role in driving the strategy around that. And for each of these, we definitely look at partnering along with you to take those solutions to the market.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us and making the trip to be here.
Thank you.
Another great partner. So great for him to make the journey to be here with us. And not just him, we have a number of members of the TCS team. Again, they're out in the area with a booth, so please take a moment to go speak with them. Okay, so our last guest today from the public sector. And one of our really good customers there from an organization called DTIC, proud to introduce Hiep. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Your organization is called DTIC. Tell us a little bit about DTIC. I know that you serve lots of different organizations within the government. You serve the armed services, Air Force, Army, Navy. You also serve the all of us, the citizenry. Tell us a little bit about your organization and your role in it.
Absolutely. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And before I start, I wanted to remind the audience that I'm here to talk about our use case, but I'm not endorsing any vendors or products. So DTIC, we were established in 1945, right after the war. We wanted to collect and store all the German documents that had intelligence value or had value with future research. Now, if you fast forward to today, we are the digital library for all DoD-funded research. Effectively, if we go to the next slide here, what we have is the R&E gateway. What you see here is the research and engineering gateway that comprises of about 25 to 30 systems that allow our users to create, to secure, to connect to their peers, and ultimately share data that help to accelerate the fielding of technologies to our warfighters. It's a pretty daunting task, and for us, having that ability to allow our users to readily discover content, make sense of that content while securing it is critical to not only the agencies we support, but also everyone sitting out there. Now, this is a brief overview of what DTIC does. If there's interest in finding out more, Andrew, our information architect, has a 10:30 session this morning where he talks about some of the things that we're doing with our systems, how we're consolidating our silos. It's some pretty cool stuff that he and his team are doing, and I believe it's in Hemisphere A. Now, my role at DTIC, so I am the CTO. In that function, I get to play with technologies, find out or figure out how we can best integrate them into our ecosystem to maintain and also enhance our abilities to support our clients and customers. As my other function is the division chief over products and programs. Now, what this does is it allows me to work with the people and the processes to implement the ideas and the innovations to be able to accomplish the mission. So I'll be honest, and I am a developer at heart. So to be able to see a concept get executed and deployed to a system is a complete blessing that I've been fortunate to be involved with.
That's great. Yeah. I think a lot of us are developers at heart and wish we could be developers again. So without stealing the thunder from the talk that you just mentioned that's going to happen, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the R&E Data Hub and what it is and what it means to its customers.
Absolutely. So in the FY19 National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, Congress tasked DTIC with establishing the Global Research Watch program to effectively identify and monitor all innovations from our partners, our allies, and also some of our competitors, as well as the private sector. Now, a lot of us know that innovations happen globally, and it happens in industry. It's shifted from the DoD, And so when I mentioned a few minutes ago that we currently are the digital library for all DoD-funded research, this NDAA tasking allows us to expand that scope, to then basically identify and say, hey, our partners are working on these great ideas. Have we capitalized on that partnership? Or, hey, these are the new trends that are coming that the private sector is identifying. Are we leveraging that? So this is going to be, it's going to provide that holistic view for our decision makers to be able to, look to see what's coming and then to direct the investments to help, the warfighters.
That's great. And I imagine that in doing this and bringing this library together, there were a number of data challenges and that you had to deal with. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what those challenges were and how you resolved them.
So when we got the task, we did a lot of research and outreach, and what we found out there was a very dedicated community for horizon scanning. What we discovered from talking to them was data. There's too much data. There's not enough data. We can't access the data. So when we dug a little deeper, what we found was, there are a lot of data sources, Excel, Access databases sitting around out there, Word docs, MySQL, Oracle, all those things just sitting out there, and our users or the customers couldn't get to that data, and if they could get to it, it becomes a data overload, where effectively you bring all this data in, you do a search, and you're getting back hundreds of thousands of results. I mean, most analysts don't have the option or the time to be able to do that. So what the Data Hub provides and what we're doing with it is we want to quickly bring that data in. We want to make it available for folks who want to see it. So if this is something, if you're the experts, if you're the SMEs and you want to see what's out there, we'll pull all the data in regardless of what the format is. We'll make that available via RESTful APIs or a dashboard where authenticated users can come in, see the data. If you're more of the typical users, analysts who just want to get the more refined or enriched data, we'll have other workflows to run and enrich that data on a continual basis. So we're using NiFi to bring that data in, and then we're using MarkLogic to effectively store that data and then to enrich and enhance that data to make that available. Now, the key piece to this is the recognition that customers, they like what they like. Our users like what they like. So we won't force anyone to use, what they don't like. If there's a format that they prefer, XML, JSON, CSV, we'll make sure that our RESTful APIs support that.
That's great. And I love it that you have both the challenge of too much data and not enough data, hearing that from customers. It's a typical thing of getting requirements sometimes that seem in conflict with one another. So given the kind of organization you are, security must be very important to you. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your security strategy.
Absolutely. So, we preserve the security of the collections. So then when you start pulling those collections together and actually walking them and doing that compilation, that becomes interesting. So for us, we're taking a 3-layer approach. So we will secure the APIs to make sure that you are who you are and you can actually get to what you get. We'll also secure the data at the document, the collection, and then eventually the element level. And then the third piece to that is we will encrypt the data. So the data at rest, we'll make sure that if somehow someone got through and into our system, there's still that added level of security to make sure that, okay, you got the data, but there's still that, that security in place.
So speaking of security and cloud almost always go hand in hand. When people are thinking about the cloud and migrating to the cloud, security is always top of mind for them. An organization like yours, are you thinking about the cloud? What's your thought process there?
So we've been mandated. There's a DoD CIO mandate for us to be in the cloud. So around 2015, 2016, we actually initiated the pilot where we used MilCloud 1.0 to deploy a standard web stack. So database server, web server, app server. We proved out that it worked. So in 2017, we started migrating our development environment. And around the end of 2017, we're fully migrated. So right now, we have an active Impact Level 2 dev environment in AWS GovCloud. By the end of this FY, we're going to be completely migrated off of our current on-premise solution into AWS GovCloud for our staging and production.
That's awesome.
So what's critical, and to tie this all back and how this relates to the data hub is, when you're talking about the enrichment, the harmonization, it requires a lot of compute. So for us in the cloud, the two go hand in hand because, for us to initiate a procurement action, to procure additional hardware, storage, it can take anywhere from 30 to 120 days. So with the cloud, we're able to leverage the elasticity and also the scalability, but at the same time, we just have to be very cautious with the cost.
Right.
So to be able to predict and accurately predict to make sure that, hey, the egress cost isn't going to exceed our ceiling or the compute isn't going to exceed our ceiling.
Right.
That's going to be critical in how we leverage the cloud and the data hub.
Right, so cost predictability for you, like so many others, is a really important piece of the puzzle in getting there.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time. I think if Dina was the person who traveled the furthest, maybe you're the person who had to travel the least to get here, but probably the hurdles that you had to jump over to be allowed to speak here to this audience, I know everyone really appreciates that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm really appreciative of all of those folks for coming out, taking the time, sharing what they're doing, their challenges and how they're addressing them with MarkLogic and their own innovation. I think there were a couple things that came up repeatedly, not just in this session, but over the course of the day yesterday, that seemed to be resonating with a lot of people. The thing that Hiep just mentioned is, nobody wants to wake up one morning and have a cloud bill that they weren't expecting, right? And the elasticity and the ability to get that agility and use more services when you need them just instantaneously is fantastic in the cloud. It's really a game changer. Elasticity is great and being able to burst when you need to is great, but budgets usually aren't elastic. So having some predictability in the way that you get your cloud services is really important, and that's one of the things that we've been focused on with Data Hub Service, as you've seen. I think the other thing we've heard repeatedly and heard here this morning is time to results. Karen talked about that within her customers and her organization's customers wanting to get results quickly, wanting to be able to get to the business solution, not the technology solution, but get to the business solution and get business value quickly. That's something, again, you hear a lot from us in terms of the way we build things, the way we do, just-in-time harmonization, those kinds of activities to allow you to get from start of game to business value in the time the business wants to get there. And I think there are a number of other themes. I won't go into all of them here, but I think you can see that there's a lot of commonality in the way people are leveraging MarkLogic to get some of those core values to their business customers, to their internal clients, plotting their strategy for security, plotting the way they get to the cloud and take advantage of the cloud. So once again, just want to give a round of applause for the speakers. Thank you very much for joining us. Please make sure you look for the talks that they all mentioned that their teams are going to be doing, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
You understand the importance of agile development, using an iterative, fast approach to building apps, even while business needs change. So, wouldn't it make sense to also do agile data integration? With legacy systems, you have to spend months or years on upfront data modeling and ETL, then eventually build your app. The MarkLogic Data Hub makes agile data integration possible so you can quickly build data services and launch apps faster. MarkLogic is flexible, integrating exactly the data you need when you need it. And as new data becomes available, it's integrated seamlessly, making it accessible in real time so you get immediate value. Let's say you want to build an app that provides a 360-degree view of customers. First, define what data service APIs will address that need. Then use the MarkLogic Data Hub to integrate and curate the relevant data. Just like with agile development, it's fast and iterative. It doesn't matter what form the data is in. Relational tables, documents, graph data, messages, you can load the data as is and it's instantly searchable, providing real value on day one. And because the data is harmonized, enriched, and mastered inside the Data Hub, the data integration process takes a fraction of the time, while providing a built-in level of security and governance that a disjointed patchwork architecture can't match. The best part? You can use the MarkLogic Data Hub service to deploy the entire architecture in just a few clicks. You don't have to spend time assembling parts or managing infrastructure. All of these innovations make your data integration process more agile and automated, allowing your team to focus more on what matters, building great apps that provide more business value sooner. Get started with MarkLogic today.
Good afternoon, everybody. It feels like just 7 hours ago I was here with you. Did you miss me? So we're going to do the fireside chat with Christopher. And the way this works is I've got some questions here that I'll ask. And then after a little bit, we'll open it up to all of you. So start thinking about questions that you want to ask. We'll have people running around with microphones so Christopher can hear you and so we get it recorded. But we'll jump in here first. And Chris, I want to start with the same question I ask you every year, which is there was a ton of stuff that we talked about this year, that we talked about, that customers talked about. What are you excited about?
What I'm particularly excited about seeing this MarkLogic world is how many customers are using the Data Hub and really getting things accomplished with it. I think at the chat last year, there's this theme I brought out about raising the level of abstraction, and I think we really are doing that. We're seeing that. We're seeing people talking about what problems they're solving with MarkLogic, and it's not bits and bytes and gigabytes and whatever. Now it's how you can take a tough problem and solve it. That makes me actually feel pretty good that we're not in the weeds. I'll get in the weeds if you want me to get in the weeds. But it's good to see that people are really using the time here to talk about strategies and techniques, how to use MarkLogic to solve things. Yeah,
it was, Data Hub was everywhere.
Yeah.
People were really talking about the kind of the next level of issues that they're facing and trying to solve. So that was really cool. Another thing that we've talked about for a number of years now is AI and machine learning and where we're going with that. And we made a big announcement this year. But everybody's talking about AI and ML. So what's different for us?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit. I'll tell you what we're doing in the engineering team about it. That if you're familiar with the way we do things at MarkLogic is we build platforms in layers, and so we're doing machine learning the same way here. That with MarkLogic 10, we're adding a built-in API to talk to machine learning library. The library we're using is the Microsoft CNTK library, but we're going to provide at the base layer, for those who really want to get into the hacking, a built-in capability so you can use machine learning a library inside MarkLogic, inside the database. What that will give us is that library will work whether you're running on ordinary CPUs. It also will be able to use GPUs. So if you want to do GPU computing from within MarkLogic, that's going to be there in MarkLogic 10. However, if you don't want to do at that level, I mean, we're not just going to do that. We really want to apply this and use this within the Data Hub. So what we will be doing is applying using GPUs and machine learning to smart mastering. I think that it's a great technology to really get the mastering together. So we're going to really provide a whole stack so that you can get the access to it. With that, I think we can do, I think that the most typical use cases to be able to apply a model within MarkLogic, whether or not that model was developed, trained outside of MarkLogic, but we're also going to provide a way of training within MarkLogic. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to do there. We're just getting started with MarkLogic 10 with this, so I expect us to do a whole lot of stuff over time. Yeah.
Okay, so you said a bunch of things there.
Yeah, it was a long answer.
So let me just hit on a couple of things that you said and dig into them a little bit more. I know. So you said that people would be able to train models in MarkLogic or outside MarkLogic. So why would somebody train outside MarkLogic?
Because that may be the way you, if you are a data scientist, you may want to use the tools that you already have at your disposal to build and train a model. And classically, I think that's what a typical data scientist would want to do. So at the first level of MarkLogic, you should be able to take a model that may either perhaps an industry standard model or something you've trained on your own, and then use it during curation in MarkLogic. So at that level, you don't need to use MarkLogic to do your training. You could already have a way that you want to do your training.
So if you're a data scientist, you're an ML person, machine learning person.
That other ML.
The other ML. You can basically do things the way you're used to doing them. You can use the tools that you're already using. You can train the way you're already training. Then you can take those models and execute them in MarkLogic just right away.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That's what we mean by applying a model. So I think there's an important aspect of what reason why we think embedded ML in MarkLogic, machine learning in MarkLogic, is because MarkLogic can really provide the control and the facilities for getting your data in the right forms for either training or for applying a model. There's a big aspect in machine learning. It's not just running the model. You actually have to have the data in a consistent form that the model was trained against. And I think that's what the MarkLogic environment can really help you on that.
And you've said a couple of times in conversations that we've had that document databases put data in a really good form for training.
Yes, I think that document data, there's this natural, the data in a document, there's a natural collection there or association of the data items in a document. Some of the power of machine learning is to actually notice patterns that you may not know. The whole purpose of training is to actually have the machine learning system is to identify the patterns that may be subtle that's not there. So from a document, you can basically have all of the information available for a particular entity if you're describing the entity in the document. You don't have to know ahead of time what are the subtle issues that you may train against. And so that's why I think the training with documents is a lot more powerful than actually having to know what parts you want to train against.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you already mentioned smart mastering.
Yeah.
So we've just been talking about people training their own models and applying their own models, but smart mastering is about us doing the training and the modeling and applying it so that people get value from it without having to know anything about machine learning.
Yes, I think there's a lot of commonality between the use cases that we can train models. Classic model is identifying street addresses, something like that. That could be something that everybody may have an issue with. If you want to do mastering, identifying what fields are independent of the names. And so I think that largely is there's a lot of commonality. It's maybe independent of a lot of the use cases. There's stuff that's specific to a use case, but then there's stuff that we can, over time, get a common base for. Yeah.
And you've spoken before about applying machine learning to elasticity in a service.
Yeah, yes. I think that if you look at perhaps one of the things, we can get into the cloud service, the usage patterns of a service, you can do machine learning on that to anticipate. What we want to do in the cloud services is be able to anticipate demand, and that's something that we can certainly do with machine learning, is to actually do better scaling if things fit a familiar pattern. So I think that machine learning is a great way so that we expect to, within our service, we're going to be doing a lot of monitoring. That's going to provide us a data set that we can actually train against to anticipate what the demands are in a service.
Okay, so I touched on cloud a little bit, so let me follow up on that.
Yeah.
Let me start by getting kind of your impression. What is it like to use DHS? What is the experience, Data Hub service? What is the experience like?
Yeah, so what we want to provide on the Data Hub service is an experience of using MarkLogic Data Hub as a system where, I'm not quite going to say black box, but there's a lot of stuff in terms of provisioning and monitoring that we want to do automatically. With the Data Hub services, the conceptual Data Hub that we've seen in so many of these talks about having curation, having your flows run, having your final database and building your data services on that you should be able to build that. And that the whole issue about, well, how many hosts do we run on? How much memory do I need? How much storage? We want to take care of that, but really provide this abstract Data Hub platform for building your Data Hub on. And so what we're doing with the Data Hub services is really raising the level of abstraction about what your Data Hub platform is. You still do your Data Hub development, but we want to take care of the details of the hardware and the compute and the storage and the network and all that, take care of that for you.
So in DHS, there is no admin account, right?
Yes, in DHS, what is the, for good or bad, certainly one thing is you don't run as admin. We use the full capability of our security with privileges and everything, and so that you have to be a little bit more disciplined using it though. But the reason why you can't run as admin is for security certification purposes. We want to have a real secure environment. We're gonna force you to be disciplined. It's effectively, for whatever pain it is. But this is actually one of the reasons why I think that the service may be a more secure environment than typically in the data center, is because in order for us to get certification, we have to be disciplined, and so we're sort of imposing this discipline that may not actually exist as so strongly in your data center. So for good or bad, you have to be more disciplined using the service.
Okay, I'll just say for good.
For good, yes. Well, for bad, it's annoying if you don't want to be disciplined, yeah. Right? Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point. Okay, so since you touched on it, I'll jump ahead in my notes a little bit. And we collectively at MarkLogic have been spending a lot of time on security certifications, and you've been in the thick of it. Expound a little bit on what that process is like. Yeah,
so we're putting a great deal of effort into certification, and that's because it's the way it's forcing a discipline upon ourselves, but it's the way for you to be confident that the environment that we're building is secure and stable. Now, security certification, here's an example, is all network connections from anything to anything have to be encrypted. Not only do they have to be encrypted, is we have to use a certification stack of having all the right certs. So when we're provisioning within Amazon, is every little connection that's going on there, there has to be SSL encryption with the proper certs. Storage, we're encrypting the storage. We're not only using encryption at the storage level, we're using the MarkLogic encryption. Security management, we want you to use a secure LDAP user management system. So there's a lot of stuff we're doing that, like I say, for good or bad for us, it's annoying having to do it. But to get certification, we're going through the process of really defining what is a good practice for running a secure environment. So it is a lot of work, but I like it because it's really giving us a good, secure environment. I have a lot of confidence in it, knowing what we're doing to get the certification.
And I think you've said in the past that we're doing these certifications. There's lots of different ones. There's various standards that we're conforming to. But there are things that we're doing because of the level of security that we want to provide that aren't even required by the certifications.
Yes, there are things that we do just because we want to do it right. So we're doing a lot of design. I guess I can talk a little bit about fundamentally what we do to run the service. When you go to the MarkLogic at marklogicsvc.com, this is what we call the service portal. The service portal is a secure application where you do account management, you can figure out, you do your, you can sort of create your data hub service. That portal provisions a full network on Amazon, provisions your cluster, gets it up running, and it sets you all up. In that service is we're continuously running provisioning and monitoring software to monitor your cluster. So this is how we know when to scale it. This is also how we know if there's any failures that are happening. So we're actually doing a bunch of stuff in the background and trying to, and we are automating as much as we can all the monitoring and scaling to be able to support your running cluster. So. Yeah.
So, if you go to any random companies talk about their service, they say a lot of the same cloudy sort of words. What makes DHS different from some of those other services that people might be familiar with?
One particular, we're trying to still keep the same level of security and robustness that you're used to within the cloud. One thing that comes to mind is within Amazon, you can set up your own VPC, your virtual private cloud. And most Amazon customers will just set up a VPC. Like, for example, Netflix. We all know Netflix uses Amazon and runs on Amazon. They use maybe one, maybe two VPCs for all of Netflix. We create for every customer their own VPC. And so we are the most demanding use of VPCs on Amazon right now. And it's because we really want to run each customer in their own secure private environment. So we do layers of the security that you're in a VPC. Even within the VPC, we're doing encrypted communications. Even though we're doing encrypted communications, we're doing encryption at rest in our storage on top of encrypted storage. So we're doing a lot of of discipline, security, and depth in there. So just because we want to provide the best, most secure environment, we want to have you to be confident in MarkLogic service.
So with all these layers of security, is it still fast?
Yes, it's fast. Yeah, I can tell you, it kind of leads to the, I know you, I'm anticipating a question with, but I'll just go in because I'm watching the clock here. One thing that I'm excited about, why I think the Data Hub service is good, is because we can practice what we preach. In that I read a lot of support cases, and a great deal of support cases we get at MarkLogic are about ops. Is how I'm having trouble with operations. You know, I have a policy about doing it this. Many of our customers may have policies that don't really match what our best practices. And so what we can do is really apply our best practices for issues about scaling and provisioning. I certainly, probably there are people in the audience to know that one thing we like to use is memory. And a lot of data center operations don't quite get that we like to use memory. What we can do, since we are doing the provisioning, we can provision so that there's enough memory and that we can track memory and make sure we don't run out of memory. That's an example of how we know what the best practices are, and we will automate the best practices so we can make sure that we're reaching the optimum level of performance. You don't have a problem that you may run into at the data center, that you hit something, you don't know what's going on, you have to do a support case, you have to go back and forth and find out, oh gee, I need more memory, oh what do I need? So if we're applying our best practices automatically, we can maintain a quality of service that's high all the time. That's why I think that we can really provide a high level of performance.
And by the way, when Chris says he reads a lot of support cases, he means he reads every support case. Yeah. So I think I saw out there somewhere Hiep, there he is, who runs our database engineering team. So what are those folks? What's the database engineering team doing to enhance what's going on in the service?
So over the last year, since last MarkLogic World, first of all, you know, we're coming up on MarkLogic 10, and you know, we announced MarkLogic 10. But I just want to point out that we've been doing releases every quarter, adding new features to MarkLogic Server every quarter for the last year. Since MarkLogic, you probably are you're better at listing everything we've done since the last year. I can tell you what we're working on right now on MarkLogic 10. We're really, the things that I know that are coming to mind is we're extending our granular security that we can do element level security will get extended into the triple store and into SQL and Sparkle. That's one of our big changes coming up in MarkLogic 10. We're upgrading to a new version of JavaScript, and we're adding the machine learning support. But so those are big changes to inside the server in MarkLogic 10. But over the last year, we've been improving the data handling. We've been, gosh, I always think forward. I don't even remember what I did 2 months ago. So we're now within server engineering. We're on this pace where we really want to figure out what can we do in terms of incremental releases, get to a higher cadence, a faster cadence of releases. Yeah.
And in one of those releases, we introduced the D-Node scalability technology, and that has a direct impact on cloud.
Yes, we've been building things in to the servers that we can directly use in the Data Hub service. In order to drive, if we want to be able to scale, the way the Data Hub service works is it will scale. You can just keep feeding data to it. It's not going to tell you to stop. We'll let you load the data, and we will scale the data capacity as you add to it. In order to do that, we've made it so that we can do a rebalancing and scaling a lot more automated way and a lot more efficiently. That's an example of what we've done to the server that we can directly apply in the service.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to break right here, and we'll turn it open to audience questions. I have a few more questions I'll come back to if we have time.
Yeah.
But let's go to the audience, and I think we have a couple people
up
with
the lights,
microphones.
Yeah. If you're in, well, I don't think anybody's in the balcony.
Is anybody in? I don't.
Yeah.
There are a few people.
have-
If you're in the balcony, you probably need to come down to ask a question.
Okay.
Okay, then I'll start. This topic of D-node scaling sounds really interesting. Can you elaborate?
Was it D-node or E-node? D-node?
D-node scaling.
D-node scaling.
What's the difference between an E-node and a D-node?
What's an E-node and a D-node? Even MarkLogic's this big C++ program. When a MarkLogic cluster is pretty much a bunch of hosts each running this big C++ program. But what's different between the hosts is how they're configured. So what we say is a D node for data node would be a host that is really dedicated to managing data stored on your storage, on your disk. And so that's not just the data, but also indexes. So during query resolution, if any index lookups and also storage lookups are done by D nodes. An E node is an evaluator node. That's what will actually run your JavaScript or run your Xquery query and process the results from multiple D nodes across the cluster. So E-node scaling is really pretty simple, that as your query workload, you have more queries, we just add more E-nodes. And that's a pretty traditional, on Amazon scaling, it's pretty easy because E-nodes don't really have much storage on their own. D-node scaling is a little more complicated because D-nodes actually store your data. We can't just make a new D-node. Well, we can, but it's got no data on it. So what we are doing for D-node scaling is at some threshold, like when it's full, we'll define what full means. At some point, we're going to split. We're going to double the number of D-nodes and split the data out. And so part of what we need to do is how do we do that efficiently? And that's a good question. The way we're going to do that efficiently by basically splitting your data across, from doubling the number of forests and splitting your data, copying, and I don't want to go into too much detail how we're doing it, but it's essentially, we want to grow D nodes by basically doubling, splitting data, and splitting the workload. And then we can shrink by halving, by combining forests. And so for D node scaling, it's scaling by doubling and scaling down by halving. What does it mean to be full? I don't know how familiar. Your first impulse would mean that we're running out of disk space. But I think, this is back to having read support cases, you actually run out of memory faster than you run out of disk space. Usually our customers run out of, so it's more full about the memory you need to actually resolve your queries. And so there's actually multiple ways you can be full. We can actually, if you run out of disk space, we need to make another D node. But if you run out of memory, we can actually just tell Amazon, shut down the instance, get a bigger instance, and plug a bigger instance in there too. So there's two levels of scaling. One is the scale for memory, and one is the scale for disk. So part of what we want to do on the service is we want to have this continuous monitoring of the disk space you're using and the memory you're using, also monitoring using machine learning. When's a good time to do scaling? And to actually, behind the scenes, scale at the storage level. That is separate from the kind of day-to-day query evaluation scaling that maybe, at certain times a day we're doing more queries, other times a day we're less. So there's two levels of scaling. There's scaling E nodes for queries, and then there's scaling D nodes for data. And we're going to do both of those in the service. And it will work. Don't worry. We've been working on it. Yeah.
Okay, and we said that D-node scalability got better. How much better did it get?
Okay, so fine, you're looking for a number.
Yes.
So we we made some changes to the, now we're going to get real techie now. Fine, this is a techie question. We made changes to the rebalancer. One thing that we did, I think it was 906 or 90, I think it's 907, is we added the rebalancer can actually copy stands. So we're going to get really detailed now. The way we can split is we'll actually copy all of the forest data from one machine to the other with a fast stand copy. And then transactionally, so we'll have a copy of the forest, and then transactionally, it actually will look that we have a copy of the forest and then we will transactionally delete things from one forest and add things to another forest. So we can do this very efficiently. We're seeing it's generally 10 times faster than the old style rebalancing. By doing stand copying, so I'm pretty excited about it. It's pretty efficient.
Okay, that went by really quickly.
10 times.
10 times faster.
10 times faster.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's 10 times faster growing. It's 20 times faster shrinking, but nobody cares about shrinking. So. Yeah.
We'll have to work on flipping that.
Yeah. I could explain, I'm not going to do it now, about why shrinking is twice as fast as growing. So,
okay, it's hard to see. Any next question? I asked one of our engineers earlier to try and think of a question that would stump Christopher, but he just said, stump Christopher?
Yeah.
Down here.
So one of the things with machine learning is it's becoming increasingly important to be able to explain why it did what it did. Right now, MarkLogic is obviously great at explaining the lineage with data and what happened to it all the way from from ingestion to harmonization. So do you see MarkLogic also being able to provide that level of clarity into what machine learning algorithms will do in the future with your data?
Yes, and I think we definitely want to get at this problem of explaining why. Our first step is to just add the machine learning capability. But what we already have in the data hub is this being able to lineage of data. So I think we should be able to extend this lineage to know what models were applied. Definitely, I think this is a challenge we would like to get at. You definitely want to know where your data came from, even if this data was derived by running a model. So,
okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure, you can have your own.
It's a really hard problem.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're doing with the approach that Christopher talked about in terms of how we're embedding machine learning in MarkLogic is that we are going to be able to sort of keep up with the state of the art as things improve and address other types of issues where, in some cases you might not want black box machine learning. You might want a different approach that has better, explainability. And the way the team has embedded that technology in MarkLogic, I think it's done in a way where we're going to not only be able to add our own enhancements, but keep pace with the enhancements in the broader machine learning and AI community.
So, Anand here. So I have a technical question. When you're planning to expand the data nodes automatically, there has been an issue in the past where if at all you're making a change like disabling or enabling stem searches, on a database, it might actually reindex almost every fragment or document. And that takes space too, and internally runs merge, takes more file system space. So how would you tackle that when you expand your data nodes, and how will you shrink it back?
It's still, we're not going to change that. still fundamental layer of MarkLogic is how it reindexes, and it reindexes transactionally, builds its indexes incrementally. What we're going to do in the Data Hub service is provide enough I/O capacity, provide enough compute capacity to do index changes. Still, it's your Data Hub, and so you define your indexes, and you can decide when you change your indexes. We're definitely with Data Hub services providing enough I/O capacity and compute capacity for doing index changes. Our strategy is give you enough capacity to do, and we're going to regulate with the background that there's things that you do. We're not going to do anything new with index rebuilding, but we're going to provide enough capacity to do it. Many times in a data center, you may not have provisioned enough capacity for that. That's certainly we want to, it's back to the best practices, is by provisioning enough capacity to do the kind of background activities.
Okay, I think we can take one more if there's another question. Okay, I've got one more question. So Data Hub, MarkLogic, machine learning. We also announced the Pharma Research Hub. And I think that's also part of your vision about extending the level of abstraction. So maybe you could just say a few words about that.
Yes, I think that I'm pretty excited about the Pharma Research Hub.
Me too.
I think that it really provides we do a lot of customer engagement. We're working with you a lot, and we develop, there are patterns that we see with a lot of customer solutions that we build. So I think that we can go, what we want to do and what the Pharma Research Hub is an example of is take a pattern that we've found and actually build go a lot farther about building a complete solution without, not individual, but with being able to reuse it and use it across more customers. I think that we're really seeing that within each vertical, generally MarkLogic, there's this layer, I talk about these platform layers, that we have this low-level database layer, we have this Data Hub layer, we have a Data Hub service layer. We can provide now data services, and we can, by doing this, it can improve how quickly we can deliver a solution to a customer just from having industry knowledge. We'll take industry knowledge from other customers and be able to apply that and get stuff done faster.
So that's something people can expect to see more of.
Yeah, I would. We're not just going to do Pharma Research Portal. That's definitely the first thing we're working at, but I could imagine other industries figure out what it is. But we're not just going to stick with pharma.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you, Christopher. Before we let Christopher leave the stage, we have one other event to take care of, which I always enjoy, and that is the Christopher Lindblad Award. So this is an award obviously named after our founder, Christopher, and traditionally we give this to a single individual, and it's somebody who within their organization has really pushed forward to promote and execute innovation within their organization based on MarkLogic. And these are people who really are innovators themselves, and they're embracing new technologies or new approaches to drive value into their organization. And we don't give this to an organization, we give it to an individual. And last year, we didn't give it to an individual, we gave it to two individuals. As I said this morning, and I can see them out there, Len and Maureen. Yeah. And this year, we're actually going to keep up that tradition. We've got two individuals who work in one of the largest most profitable financial institutions in the world. It's headquartered in Zurich. Can you guess what it is? It has more than 46,000 employees working in 50 countries and assets in excess of 400 billion. And these two people have really been great champions of innovative technologies, including MarkLogic. And we're really happy to have them as partners with us. They've been creating new solutions to help, and now I'll spoil the surprise, Credit Suisse's asset and wealth management divisions, helping it run more efficiently, more cost effectively. And they're also building infrastructure that makes the company more agile. That's a big thing for us, is promoting agility. They've been able to do that. They're promoting agility and allowing their organization to adapt faster to changing business requirements and opportunities. And they're actually one of the first customers doing a deep exploration of our Data Hub service. And how many people were able to make it to their session today? It's hard to see. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it, but I spoke to a number of people who did and heard it was absolutely awesome. They talked about what they're doing within their organization and their experiences with Data Hub service. If you didn't see it, we're going to have videos of all the sessions, so really encourage you to go back and watch that session online. I'd also like to mention that one of the two people whose names I'm about to announce made a trip out to MarkLogic and took the time to come out, speak with us, speak with our product management team, our engineering team. She even came out and spoke during lunch to the whole organization. Really made the effort to work with us, to help us guide where we're going with the product. And again, great partnership in what we're doing with the product and where we're going with it. And their plans are really exciting, and we're very proud to be a part of them. So please help me in congratulating Gayatri Pandurangan and Pranav Rao from Credit Suisse.
Have some.
I think we have, there we go. And
okay,
we'll do one with just you two.
Yes, congratulations.
Can he get a picture of just you two together?
Yeah, you can just right here, and we'll. Great, so congratulations.
Thank you.